Today's episode of the Everything Matters podcast is brought to you by Be So Well. At Be So Well, they know the kinds of people, and women in particular, who want to be in control of their health. In order to be that way, you need to really know what you're dealing with, what's going on inside your body. The problem is, it's hard to find a simple solution, which makes you feel that it's too complicated, that there's no hope. At Be So Well, they understand how you feel. They've been in your shoes. That's why they've come up with a system that would make it simple. Here's how it works. Step 1, you take a quick 10-question quiz. Step 2, they recommend a kit. Step 3, you watch your health improve. So go ahead and take the first step. Go to besowell.co. That's besowell.co. So you can stop guessing and start taking control of your health today. And at checkout, be sure to use the promo code EMP22 to get a 10% discount on all purchases. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Everything Matters podcast. I'm your host, Bradford Speaks. Today's guest is going to be Noelle Jackson. Noelle is currently residing in Los Angeles, and she's a working and performing actress. She's had the privilege of working with some of the biggest names in Hollywood, including Tyler Perry, as well as Kevin Hart. I'm excited to have Noelle on the show, not for that, but what I'm most excited to have her on the show about is to share her work that she's doing with her company called Embody with Noelle. Through past traumatic experiences that she had as a child growing up, she dealt with issues that a lot of women deal with around body imaging and around low self-esteem and low confidence. Over the years, Noelle has done a lot of deep looking into herself and has been able to develop a methodology for herself that incorporates some spirituality, some body work that brings forth a woman to have a connection with herself that she didn't have before. So I'm so thrilled to have Noelle to talk about this on the show because there's so many women out there that are dealing with these sorts of things, particularly young women, because of what's shown on social media and the impact that that has on how women see themselves and how they compare themselves on what we're taught to think is the standard for beauty. So please join me, everyone, my super special guest today, Noelle Jackson, to the Everything Matters podcast. Let's get it popping. Noelle, hello and welcome to the Everything Matters podcast. Thank you so much for being on the show today and for being my guest.
I'm Bradford. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I appreciate your response and getting back to me quickly and getting the information back so we could really create a powerful interaction with each other in hopes to impact and inspire the people who are listening to the podcast today. So again, thank you for everything that you're up to and all the difference that you're out to make in the people's lives that are that you interact with on a daily basis, as well as in the world. So thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
My pleasure. So let's start this thing off by, I always ask people people want to know a little bit about you, right? And one of the best places to start and allowing people to know who you are is to tell us where you're from. I'm big on where you're from a small town myself in Louisiana, South Louisiana, called Bogalusa. Some of my listeners, quite a few of my listeners, that I found out recently when I was home, are listening and tuned into my podcast. So I'm so excited about the support that they give me. Shout out to BOG. So where are you from? Where'd you grow up? What was life like life like for you growing up as a kid? And just tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, I love it starting at the beginning. So I was born in New York. I was born on a military base in West Point, New York. But I moved to Knoxville, Tennessee when I was like 3 or 4 years old. And that's where I grew up, is in Tennessee. Knoxville has grown quite a bit since I left, but it was like small, medium-sized Southern town. There wasn't the most diverse place. I was always into the arts. I was a dancer growing up. So that's what kept me busy. My grandparents, funny enough, had like a little bit of land and they had sheep and chickens. So like when I was really young, wow. I spent a lot of time on their property and like would raise baby chicks and feed like the little lambs and take care of them. So yeah, Tennessee, my parents were divorced when I was pretty young. I had extracurricular activities to keep me pretty focused, which was good because my home environment was a little chaotic at times. Just, two
Got it.
single parents trying to make it work financially and without having a whole lot of support. We definitely were in the minority in Knoxville. So I think it really gave me my perspective of always just wanting to be somewhere a little bigger and more multicultural and diverse.
Yeah, no doubt. And I can totally attest to it. Now, we didn't have goats. So let me ask you this first. Do you consider yourself a country girl? I mean, chickens, goats. I mean, that's pretty country. Would you say that? Or you consider yourself kind of a city mindset? What do you think?
A little bit of both, like cosmopolitan in habits, but deep down my heart is like simple. Like I want to just be by the beach and be barefoot and like doing what I love.
Totally dig it. Totally dig it. I got a quick rooster story that I want to share with you. A lot of my friends know this story already growing up because I wasn't in a deep country, but I was country enough where I grew up that my grandmother had chickens. Mm-hmm. So like you, she'd raise chicks and grow them up to be big chickens. And, they'd meet their demise and we'd have chicken dinner, So we had a rooster. I must have been about 3 to 4 years old, Noelle. And I would go out in the mornings and pick up the eggs out of my grandmother's hen shed, right? Or, chicken shed. And one morning I was out there getting the eggs, and I guess the rooster there wasn't happy that I was coming in and taking the hen's egg. Uh-oh. So, roosters can be pretty ornery, right? And so the rooster got so pissed, he jumped all over me, scratched my back. I still have a long scratch on my back from when I was a 4-year-old when this rooster attacked me.
Oh my God.
That was the last day. Yeah, that was the last day he would attack me and the last day he would attack anyone because my grandmother took care of that, if you know what I mean.
Oh, no.
So there's my chicken hen, harvesting egg story right there.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
No, cool. It always scared me when my grandmother would go get a chicken every Sunday for dinner. I would like stand behind in the little patio, the screen door, because that process isn't great to watch.
It really isn't great to watch. There's a lot of trauma in watching that as
true.
a kid, right? Well, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And it's great to know that, I know you're in a big city now, but you have the humble beginnings and, grew up in a normal household for the most part, but, had your things that were happening that were a little chaotic. And I know a lot of people go through things like that growing up as kids, and those things tend to shape us. So I want to get into a little bit more about that in the future as we go along.
Sure.
One question that I want to ask Noelle, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that wants to know, you've got a kind of, I would say, what people would call an exotic look about you. So what on earth, knowing that we live in this multi-ethnic, multi-racial, multicultural, multicolored environment that we're in today, what is your ethnicity? What are you a mix of?
My dad's Black, and we have some Native American on his side as well. And then my mom's Korean, Japanese, and white. So that was definitely interesting growing up in Knoxville, Tennessee. I got a lot of strangers walking up to me as a little girl saying, "What are you?" And then like walking away.
What are you?
So yeah, that was interesting.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine. So, how did you deal with that growing up being such a, kind of a minority of minorities in Knoxville? I can only imagine. What was that like for you?
It was hard. I mean, I'll be honest, it was really hard. I'm an only child, so I didn't really have a lot of people around me or a lot of people to talk to. Both of my parents were busy, like trying to do what they needed to do for us to survive. I definitely felt like very other and kind of felt like an alien growing up. And I think I had that typical like mixed kid feeling, like I don't fit in anywhere. And when you're not able to talk to your parents about it, I think that can make it a little more isolating. Now I appreciate it. I think it's given me a really beautiful perspective on the world and just sort of seeing things a little differently and being able to understand a lot of different perspectives. But growing up, it was hard.
Right. Yeah, I can totally imagine. I mean, there's one thing to grow up in a diverse, country, but when you're in a place, where there's not a lot of diversity, and you're kind of the only one, I can imagine that could be kind of tough. I was always on the light skin spectrum of being Black, and even myself, I dealt with colorism and being ridiculed and made fun of because I had light skin, by the darker skinned Black people in my town, and those things certainly had an impact on me, and it would certainly shape the way I saw the world and how I would interact with the world. So I appreciate you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So one thing you mentioned, Noelle, you mentioned that growing up as a kid, you had some extracurricular activities. And I heard you also say that you got into dance. So, and I know that the arts are still a big part of your life today. So what kind of dance were you doing as a kid, and how did you end up in that, and where did that take you eventually?
Yeah. Dance was my passion. Dance is what kind of kept me on, I think, as a kid. I started doing like jazz dance, and I did ballet just for technique purposes, lyrical. And then I was on dance team in like middle school and high school, and went to all these dance conventions. Actually, the first time I came across the country out to LA, I was like 16 or 17 on dance scholarship. So it really helped me focus my energy. It gave me something that I was really good at and interested in. I did well in school, but it wasn't the most interesting thing to me to sit down all day and like read and listen to teachers talk. So it gave me a lot growing up.
Good. Very good. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I didn't love school either growing up. Like in my earlier years, I did. I really enjoyed it because it was kind of easy, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool."
Yeah.
And it felt good to get the acknowledgement, right, and the praise for making good grades.
Totally.
But then things started to get a little tougher, and I was like, "This isn't fun anymore. I just want to play,
Exactly.
right? Hang out with my friends."
Honestly, that's how I feel as an adult sometimes.
Right? Tell me about it. I don't want to adult today. I want to just play and hang out with my friends and have a good time.
Exactly.
No doubt. Awesome, Noelle. So you stayed right there in Knoxville, and you went to college at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, but you ended up finishing your degree. You moved to Atlanta, it's my understanding, and you ended up finishing your degree online at the University of Indiana. What did you finish your degree in, and what was the reason why you chose that particular path?
So I thought almost done with school at UT. And then I found out that I had missed a couple of credits and it would take me another year to graduate. And I just knew that I had to get out of Knoxville or I was going to end up staying there. So I moved to Atlanta. I was able to finish my degree online with Indiana University. And I got a Bachelor of Arts in Communication Studies, really because I just didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And that seemed like a good idea. That seemed general enough that I could figure it out.
Right. Oh, ironically, that's what my degree is in too. It's in mass comm and journalism and television broadcasting.
Oh, cool.
So I never used the degree. This is probably the most I've ever used my degree is doing this podcast. So, fortunately, I didn't have to pay for that degree. I had a scholarship, but thankfully, it's all worked out. So I've had a great career, and now I'm doing some journalism kind of and featuring special guests like you. Yay.
Yeah. It's funny how it all comes back around.
I know, right? It's crazy. Really is, really. Mm-hmm. So you moved to Atlanta, finished your degree online, and then walk us through what, well, let me ask you this question first. Why Atlanta? All the places you could have gone. I know it's not too far from Knoxville, but why'd you choose Atlanta?
Well, I'd always wanted to move to like New York or Los Angeles, but I think those two places felt a little too scary still. So I'd been to Atlanta a couple of times to like have weekend trips. And so I thought, okay, I'll just move there. It's a little more progressive, a little more diverse, more like happening arts wise. That seems like a good like starting off city. So that was really all I knew of it. I didn't know anyone there. But yeah, that's where I ended up staying for a few years. I was cocktail waitressing to put myself through school and did some internships and just kind of found my path.
That's awesome. So you were here in Atlanta for a few years, finished up your degree, and then you moved to where next?
I moved to Los Angeles.
You moved to Los Angeles? Oh my God, LA, one of my favorite cities.
I love it here. Yeah.
That is awesome. So to make a move from Atlanta to LA, there's only a few reasons why people may do that. New job, maybe you met somebody online, kind of like myself, and you move out to LA to live, or it's something in the movie industry. Which one of those works for you?
You know which one it is, Bradford. It's number 3, acting, movie industry, film and TV. It's what brought me to the City of Angels.
That is so great. So how's that working out for you? How are you enjoying being there and being in the limelight of Los Angeles around the film industry? How's that been?
I really, really love it. People have a lot to say when you tell them you're moving to LA. There's a lot of, the cons or the hard things about it. I knew that going into it. I love the city. I think I've met some of the friendliest, most open people here, people who are really passionate about living their best life, working in film and TV, all sorts of arts. I love how diverse it is, and not just in like ethnic background, just so many different ideas and types of people. I really, really like it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love living there too. And I agree with you. You know, people have their opinions and thoughts around, you know, different cities like New York. I went to New York and met some of the greatest, most friendly people there, just walking the streets, right? And moving to LA, you hear these ideas about it. And I moved there and met some of the most amazing people that I ended up working with and ended up making long-term friendships with. So, you know, I think it goes back to the old adage that says, if you want to have friends, just show yourself friendly.
Yeah.
It's one way
I
to
love
do it,
that.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And life's what you make of it, you know?
It is. Totally.
Yeah.
It is. All right, great. So you're out there acting, you know, you're pursuing your acting career. And I know that there's something else that you're really passionate about. And I want to start diving into that a little bit.
Yeah.
So you started your own business, Embody with Noelle. Tell us about how that started. What made you go down that particular path to start this kind of business? And tell us a little bit about what it's about.
Yeah, so I started this business during COVID. I've had it for a couple of years now. Really, I was inspired from my own journey going through therapy, kind of overcoming a challenging childhood, and really not feeling as confident or connected to myself as I wanted to be. That confidence was something I struggled with a lot for a long time, as well as body image. Unfortunately, that's something that a lot of young women struggle with. And so as I started going through my own healing journey, it also incorporates like my background of dance as well, just having that connection to your body. I started noticing other women, friends of mine, who were facing like similar insecurities and challenges. And I just thought if I could help myself so much and feel like so much more rooted in myself and more confident and like just connected to my body, that I would love to share it with other women. And that's really how it got inspired. And it's been great. I've been lucky enough to work with women all around the world since I started this business. It's been primarily online.
That's great.
And it's really rewarding. So I love that I have, you know, acting is my passion. It's what I love doing, embodying different roles. But funny enough, the embodiment work, it's helping women like embody all the different aspects of themselves, because we're so multifaceted as people. Like we have the whole world inside of us. And I think a lot of times when you're pursuing your path or around the same people, you get locked into a personality or habits, and maybe you're a little more self-restrained than you would like to be. And you think that's all you get to do. That's all you are, but it's not true. And so, yeah, that's what I love about it.
Very true. Very true. That's awesome. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, so you could talk about that. Because I know there's a lot of women out there that have dealt with those things growing up and continue to deal with that. So if you would mind, would you share with us, like, give us an example of maybe something that you experienced as a child that you could point back to that someone may be able to really connect with, that really impacted you in a negative way and caused you to go down this path of being sort of disconnected from your body, your emotions, and yourself in a sense?
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up with a parent who was mentally ill, and there was like some abuse in my household. And I think when you don't feel safe with one of your parents and you're not able to, you just have to tiptoe and like be very careful. You really don't feel safe out in the world. That's sort of just the way you think things are. And for me, it also led to me repressing a lot of different emotions and feelings just to get through things. I didn't feel like I could talk to anyone about things. I felt very on my own. And I brought that survivor mentality into life with me, which served me in some ways. I mean, I'm really tough and resilient, but in other ways, it definitely created a sense of disconnection from myself and other people. And I just decided that I didn't just want to live in that way. I wanted to heal and be more open and connected. And I think, I mean, childhood trauma can affect you in so many different ways. Like I had an eating disorder for a long time, just really disconnection from self. And as I kind of went through my own healing journey and worked with a therapist and got into like somatic body healing, I just felt totally different, and like the version of myself that I'd always like hoped I was deep down, but felt kind of far away from. And that's what made me really want to share it and help other women, you know?
That's awesome. Really great.
Thank you.
There's three areas, and I've done a lot of personal development for myself,
Yeah.
developing myself as a coach and as a human being. And there's these three pivotal moments in our lives that I want to share with the audience. And number one happens usually between the ages of like 0 and 7, which is called the imprint period. And it's where kids start to realize that something is wrong, right? They start to look at themselves and something is wrong. And then the second phase, which usually happens around adolescence, where kids get impacted, is that they discover that I don't belong, right? And that's that fitting in, trying to figure out, where do I fit in? How do I mesh with everyone else, right? And then that third phase typically happens around after 19 years old, when we are out into the world and we realize that the third phase is I'm on my own. And these are three very impactful phases of life that we go through as human beings, whether you're male or female. So for you, when did you realize that either something was wrong, I don't belong, or something's not right here? Like, when did you see that, because as a kid, if your parents are dealing with mental illness, you may not really know what that is. You don't know what kind of label to put on it, but you just know something's not right. Right. And then when you start comparing it to maybe going to a friend's house and you see how their parents are, like, wait a minute, it's a little bit different than what I got going on in my home, in my house. Right.
Right.
So when did you start to really realize that? When did it start to show its face for you?
I mean, you're right. Like, you don't know as a child that, oh, this is mental illness happening. It's not my fault. I think you internalize it and assume it's your fault. I mean, I think I knew pretty young, like, this doesn't feel right. There are things that are happening that like don't feel fair or right. So probably 4 or 5. I mean, but then you're just figuring out how to survive and deal in that household environment and how to act to have the least trouble as a kid.
Exactly.
So yeah, we started adapting really young.
We do. I totally agree. And I didn't realize this for a long time, things that I have been dealing with, that started to come to the surface much later on in life. And, I had to really work through those things and, get the impact of it and then really get it complete and put it behind me for, finally. Yeah. And it takes work. So I acknowledge you for putting in the work and also for being a catalyst for helping other women really discover themselves and what it means to be connected to themselves. So going back to Embody with Noelle, you've developed this sort of method of connection. And, give us an example of, well, first of all, let's back up. I want to ask you, so how did you come to discover how to move yourself beyond this? And before you answer that question, I got so many questions for you. Let's just start one. Let's start
Hit
one.
Me.
Okay. First question is, what do you think? I mean, we can sit here and talk about, childhood trauma and we know all that stuff is real and it really makes a big difference in who people become in life, right? What do you think today? And I have my own ideas, but I wanted to get your opinion. What do you think today is a major contributing factor to women in particular? Because I agree, I think women are some of the most amazing creatures on this planet, to be a mother, to be a provider, to be a sister, to be a caregiver. They're so multifaceted. A chef, a cook. I mean, like, pick one. They do and multitask so many different things at once. It's pretty amazing. What do you think is right now driving, especially the younger women, in society, and them having this issue with being connected to their bodies and their image, self-image?
I mean, I feel like I know the messages I received growing up, like, we're not really taught to have a connection with our bodies. If that is something that is part of your life, it's more like sports, which is very performance focused. Or for a lot of women, it's like looking a certain way. Like, we get messages from a really early age of how our bodies are supposed to look that are really just based on like the beauty industry and the media, which it's literally made to profit off of women feeling bad about themselves. So we keep buying things. So those are certainly what affected me, what I know have affected a lot of the women I work with. So having that connection to your body just for yourself and yourself alone, rather than to look a certain way, to be accepted, to be valued and loved. I think that's really important for women of all ages, but certainly like girls and young women.
Right. I totally agree with you. It is not easy for sure. And I think right along with what you're saying, I think that the media has a huge part to play in that, right? The beauty industry for sure. And trying to find a delicate balance. I've got 5 girls, and they're all beautiful in their own way. And man, trying to protect them from that and teaching them between, myself and their mothers that, you're beautiful just the way you are. There's nothing you need to change about yourself.
Yeah.
But that's me saying it as dad, her saying it as mom. Sometimes it doesn't quite land the way you want it to land because the influence of media and social media is so pervasive and so powerful, so you're fighting this battle all the time with them. So when did you realize that this disconnection that you began to feel, when did you realize that was there? And then how did you actually take that and turn it into something positive and sort of pull yourself out of that through the method that you've been working on and developed?
Yeah. I mean, I realized it was there. I really started my healing journey, like really focusing on it because it took a while. I was sort of just going through life in the survivor mentality. And then I realized something wasn't working. So 6 years ago, maybe I was like working and I just realized like life is feeling harder than I think it's supposed to feel. So I found a therapist and I just realized how stressed and anxious I was feeling all the time and just the lack of confidence. And as I found professionals to help me work through that, then I got back to dancing. I actually had stopped dancing for several years, started again. And that's how I got my start in film and TV, as I worked on a couple of movies as a dancer, which brought me back to really having a connection to my body again. And then I kind of just put the two together, like the healing piece and the movement piece, and kind of started doing my own body work practice, not knowing that's what I was creating, and journaling a lot. It sort of just started from there. It was very organic and something I created for myself that I ended up figuring out, oh, this is how this is working and how it's helping me.
That's awesome. I mean, that you were able to sort of put those two things together. And I heard you mention therapy, and I recommend anybody who's watching the podcast, therapy is always a great place to start. There's some really great coaches out there, and I'll raise my own hand. I'll say I'm a pretty good coach. If you're looking to get coached to move through certain situations that you're dealing with, these are great places to start to begin to help yourself. The first thing is realization, right? Being able to see and distinguish what's actually taking place and where you are, and just acknowledging that and accepting it for what it is. And then you can begin to do the work. So it's interesting how you were able to bring dance and healing. So let me ask you this question. If, say, I recommended my sister or my aunt or someone to come and work with you, Embody with Noelle, what would that process look like for them? Where do you start to, let's say they already come and they say, hey, you know what? I'm just not feeling that great about myself. What would be one of the first things you do with them as their coach, in a sense?
Yeah, well, typically my work, it's a mix of emotive body work. We'll do some sensual dance and embodiment practices. But where I usually like to start with people is just reawakening the body, because most of us, we are living in this world that has us on computers, multitasking. It's really reconnecting to your body and just the sensations in your body. I talk to a lot of people who say they just feel stuck in their head all the time, which is a really hard way to go through life. So bringing that energy just from up in your head, down to your lower body senses, connecting to touch, sight, smell, taste, sounds, becoming more aware of the sensations in your body. That tells you a lot about your emotions, how you're feeling, and things that you need to move through, because sometimes we're just in the hustle and bustle of everyday life. And we're I don't feel great, but I don't know what this is. And as you start to become more connected to your body, you'll understand what's going on with you more. So that's usually the foundation. And then we start incorporating movement and sensuality, and dance it's just a really great modality for expression, understanding yourself, and confidence too. It's so good to feel good in your body and to feel free to move and dance. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people got the message only some people are supposed to dance. If you can dance, there are a lot of people that are afraid to just move their bodies. And we're spiritual beings in these meat suits, whatever you want to call it. We're made to move and dance and scream and cry. And it's just getting back to that basic stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that, one of the things you're sharing so much here is, people being inside their heads all the time. And, being grounded, right? I mean, being really connected to the planet, to Earth, to people, right? And one of the other things that you mentioned that I know is a huge access to freedom is being self-expressed. And what I hear you saying is that in dance, it's an opportunity and a pathway for you to really express yourself. And there's a certain freedom that you get from doing that. And that's really
Yes,
amazing.
100%. I'm so glad you pinpointed on that the self-expression is so, so huge. I shared a post the other day. It's like self-expression is the opposite of depression to me, because when you're depressed, you're not emoting, you're not sharing how you feel. Usually you're isolating, you're like holding everything inside, and there's just all this negative emotion going on. And the more we can like feel our feelings, express them in a healthy way, like we're not going out and raging on people, and expressing what we feel inside and who we want to be, it's just a much more liberated, connected way to live. It's a lot more fun.
It really is. And we should be having more fun in life anyway, right, Noelle?
Yes, yes. I mean, if that's one thing we need to
What's the
learn from this
point?
pandemic, we need to have
Right.
fun.
I know that's right. Life is short, really short.
Mm-hmm.
So, Noelle, I don't want to step over this. Is a really, really key point that you made earlier. And I want to really make sure we nail it, because I think this is huge. A lot of the coaching that I do, people tend to think that it's something that's going on, something that's got them stuck, that's got them stopped. And one of the things that we discover very often is that word that you mentioned earlier is called confidence.
Yeah.
Confidence is huge. And a lot of times we completely miss it. So how did you find this confidence that you finally found through the work that you've been doing and all the personal development that you've done? And what's been the result of discovering and finding that confidence and putting it into action? What have you been able to do with that?
Yeah, I love that question. I mean, finding it was through the process of just healing, therapy, all the things we talked about, but it's just been like a night and day difference. I mean, before I went through this process of really investing in myself, finding the people I needed to help me, like being determined to be the woman I wanted to be, like I was so insecure. I had such low self-worth. Even like going to a party, I would like have a hard time getting my name out just to say my name. Like I just really want to let people know, no matter where you're starting from, there's so much more for you. To now, like I have worked in like major films with Kevin Hart, John Cena, Laurel Howery.
Wow.
Like dancing professionally, acting professionally for film and television, like outshining, doing the thing that like my little inner child soul always wanted to do that felt so far away. And these were things I never would have been able to do if I hadn't really invested in myself. I think you have to have hope and faith and believe in yourself so much, regardless of all the like cringeworthy moments you think you've had where you didn't show up how you wanted. You just have to really be true to yourself, because like our potential is infinite. It's really amazing what we can do as people.
Yeah, totally agree. Man, I didn't know you worked on projects that big. That's pretty with people that big for sure. So you're doing your thing out there in LA, girl. Keep it up.
Thing.
We look forward to seeing you on something. I just had one of my nephews lives out there in LA, and he just recently was in pretty major film out there. It's on Netflix. It's called Purple Hearts, and he had a pretty good, pretty big role. And I was really proud of him for stepping out. I mean, he's been acting for probably since he was about 15 or 16 years old, and he's moved to LA, stayed with his big brother for a while, and got out on his own. He's doing his thing. So proud of him. Nico, shout out, man.
Hey, Nico.
So proud of you, Noelle. So proud of you for doing your thing, and keep that up, man, making a difference. So as you know, Noelle, we all have our ups in life. We all have our downs in life. And sometimes we just kind of go like that, right? So one of the questions that I like to ask every guest who comes on Everything Matters podcast, because the podcast is about performance at the end of the day. We're performing everywhere in life, whether it's in our marriages, our jobs, any kind of a relationship, whatever we're doing, we're performing on some level. You perform in acting, right? So with performing anywhere, there's always going to be failures. So talk to me about one of the biggest challenges or biggest failures that you've had, and what you did to move yourself through that and bring yourself to triumph.
I love this question. I mean, failures, there have been so many. I just don't really look at them as failures. It's part of the process. A good example would just be shifting careers and totally turning my life upside down. I had been working in PR and marketing, and just realized I still wanted to dance and act. That was something I'd always wanted to do. I'd been a little afraid to go into it, I think. So I just went all in. I started training. I started getting in dance classes, acting classes all the time, started like reducing my focus and workload on the PR marketing and just getting my hands on like all the information, like surrounding myself with people who were doing the things I wanted to be doing. And it was a lot of, and it continues to be a lot of like investing work, just being humble, and having the mind of the beginner. But I don't know. I just think if you're not willing to be bad at something, you're never going to be great at it. You have to try and learn. Like you don't start and do anything and you're not immediately fabulous and know how to do it. You have to be willing and have such a love and passion for it that you're willing to look stupid and put yourself out there because you know in your heart that's what you're meant to be doing. That's really what I've had to do.
That's awesome. And, there's no success without risk, right? You got to be willing to take the risk. And that's what it sounds like. What you're saying is like, put yourself out there. Like, what's the worst that can happen? You could fail. Well, so what? You've got people around you that'll support you. Everyone has somebody that can support them. And people say, well, I don't have any family. I don't have anyone to support me. Everybody has somebody that can support you. Goes back to what we talked about earlier, just making yourself friendly, showing yourself as a friend. You'll make friends, right? And you can build a community and a network that'll get behind you and support you in whatever it is you want to do. So I love that. I love that you're willing to step out and have the courage to say, hey, you know what? I'm going all in. I love it.
I mean, the alternative is just really boring. I think we're so like fixed on the idea of having to have things a certain way, have the house, have the yada, yada, yada. Why do you think so many people are like on prescription pills, living lives they don't want to live, eating really unhealthy, have poor health? Like what we want internally versus what we think we're supposed to have can be very different things. So I got tired of being bored and feeling unfulfilled. And that's a great drive.
Yeah. Being bored and unfulfilled is no way to live this life. That's for sure.
No.
Inside of your huge commitment, the inspiration, the drive, and the motivation that caused you to start this embodiment practice, Noelle, what are you committed to women having out of working with you, out of being in this practice with you, working with you? What do you want women to get on the other side as a benefit and a value of working with you?
The number one thing is more confidence. I think a more grounded, certain sense of self. Also having more connection to their sensuality. I mean, there's so much shame tied up in that for women because of the way it's been portrayed in media, because the way most of us grew up with learning that was a negative thing, whether it was like said outright or sort of subconsciously. When you feel good and confident in those areas with how you relate to your body and being free to like feel sensual, be sensual when you want to, I think it gives you a sense of wholeness as a woman that most of us don't have naturally because of the trauma and programming we get growing up. So those are the two main things, and just feeling more free with your body. But it's a real sense of confidence and a greater understanding of who you are and being able to express all the different like yummy facets of self.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. One of the things I just want to say as well is that, as to all the women out there who may work with Noelle or may work with anyone around doing this kind of work, I see happening in society sort of a divisiveness that is attempted to be played upon men versus women. There's a attack on masculinity, and that I've seen over the last 4 or 5 years. And what I want to say is that there's no reason why a woman can't be strong, powerful, independent, and still be in a wonderful and loving cohabitation relationship with a male or a female, whoever their partner is of their choice, right? They can have that. So, that bothers me. And I see in your work the ability for women to really connect with themselves on a level where they can actually let go and be free of some things and just not make anything mean anything. And it's just, hey, we're just together, and that's okay. It's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such an interesting time. I feel like a lot is just headline grabbing. It's really not fully thought out ideas. It's, nuance is a real and important thing. And that's not always easy to capture in like a tweet or like a social media post.
Right.
But yeah, we're free people. We should have free minds, make your own decisions. And I think the more connected you are to yourself, the more you're able to connect to others. Certainly partner, your husband, like friends, whomever, on a more real level.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what makes life rich and joyful, right? Love it. So one of the things I want to know is, as you've started your business and throughout life, I mean, you've moved to LA, you're pursuing a career in acting. You've got your embodiment business going. You've got a lot of things you're juggling right now. And a lot of times for most of us, there's someone or someones that we look up to and we get inspiration from. Who would you say, and I use this word very lightly, idolize? Like, who do you look up to? Who inspires you? Who have you always seen and said, man, that story is so inspiring and it makes me want to do my best and be my best? Who would those people or that person be for you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there have been a few. I love learning about women who maybe come from really challenging backgrounds and are able to overcome them and really recognize their full potential or their dreams. Eartha Kitt is one person who I look up to. She had a really hard upbringing, grew up in poverty, and ended up being Eartha Kitt, touring the world, doing what she loved, having a huge impact. Also, someone like Tiffany Haddish. She had an extremely difficult childhood, like grew up in the foster care system, and look at what she's done with her life. Just the level of like grit and belief in herself and resolve, I think, is just so inspiring. I read her book, actually, The Last Black Unicorn, and I've read it a couple of times because it's just so inspiring, the level of commitment to herself she had. And then also someone like Jane Fonda. I mean, she grew up and despite coming from like a Hollywood royalty family, had a very like emotionally unwell mother, overcame a lot of health challenges with eating disorders, and has been very transparent about the struggles that she's dealt with, which I think is just such a beautiful thing when other women choose to do that and are able to. I find that really uplifting and inspiring. So those are a few women who I definitely look up to.
Pretty wide range from Eartha Kitt to Jane Fonda to Tiffany Haddish. I mean, there's like 3 generations that you're talking about there. So pretty awesome that you actually have such a range and you appreciate people from, 50, 60, 70 years ago and even, today. So that's pretty awesome. One of the things that I'm present to is, with being a woman and I, as someone who has a ton of respect for women and what you all, are capable of, number one, and then the things that you have to deal with, I was listening to a talk on YouTube a couple of weeks ago, and the gentleman was talking about, the decisions that women have to make. Like you're on a timeline in a lot of ways, right? Particularly when it comes to, am I going to have kids or not? When am I going to have kids? Am I going to chase my career? Am I going to put the career off? Like these are pivotal decisions that happen, and there's like this torn aspect, and I've seen it with women, that I've been with, mothers of my children. Having to deal with, okay, I want to be home with my kids, but also I want to chase a career. So, it's a tough spot, and they have to make a choice at some point because you only got so many good years to reproduce and have kids if that's what you're going to do. Right. So, granted, you can live a great and healthy life and have kids to a much later age. But for the most part, there's an optimal window to have kids. So, I love that you're inspired by so many women. And one thing that I hear that you're saying is that you love women who face challenges and have that grit to be able to push through situations that they faced.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really just speaks to the power of the human spirit and what we're actually capable of.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Noelle, one of the things that we really want to focus on in the Everything Matters podcast is everything matters, right? I mean, like young people, old people, doesn't matter, middle-aged. I want to provide inspiration for everyone. For you, being a young woman, chasing after your dreams, there could be some young girls who were just like you were, 10, 15 years ago, as you were looking at, what am I going to do with my life? What dreams do I have? Am I going to have the courage to go and chase those dreams? So, as if you could speak to either the younger Noelle or, some other young ladies who might be watching the Everything Matters podcast today, what advice would you give them? What nuggets would you share that have really worked for you and have really enabled you to go out and do what you're doing with your life?
I think that's such an important question, Bradford. I think, the biggest area I would say is to believe in yourself and to really focus on doing things that build your self-worth. I dealt with a lot of insecurity when I was growing up. And I think that that's something that the earlier you recognize that and then start to give yourself the love that you deserve and do things to build it and just feel more confident, more grounded. I think that just the better situation you're going to be in and the more readily you'll be able to pursue your dreams, because the more faith you have in yourself, the easier it's going to be to believe in yourself and chase those dreams that maybe seem really far off and unbelievable. But it's hard to do that if you are just dealing with a ton of insecurity all the time. So seek out resources and people that are also doing the same thing. Be very choosy about the people that you spend time with. Just try to be as loving to yourself as you can. And that way you can bring more love to the people and the communities that you're in.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that's really easier said than done, right? Like, people know that they should love themselves. They know that they need to be confident, because that's going to give you access to things that you wouldn't normally have if you were not confident. And one of the things that I learned and I find out in working with people as a coach is that a lot of times there's stuff that's there that they can't see. There's areas where they think they're confident, and it turns out after a deep discovery and conversation that they're not as confident as they thought they were. Because one of the things that I find is, as human beings, we have this miraculous and really incredible ability to survive. And I mean physical survival, as well as mental, emotional, and even psychological and ego survival, right? I mean, it's all what we take on as our identity, and we believe that's who we are. But to your point, when you can actually break that open and start to see what it looks like for me to be confident, what it looks like for me to believe in myself, then it opens up doors to things that you never thought were possible. And I'm so glad that you're here today to share that with us and to be an inspiration for young girls who are watching the show. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So I want to close the show out with, as we always do, how do we contact you? If someone wants to reach out and learn more about, Embody with Noelle, they want to learn more about you and your story and how you had, the breakthroughs and triumphs that you've had, or they just want to maybe book a session with you and see what this thing is all about, how would they find you on social media and on the internets of things out there?
Sure. So my website is embodywithnoelle.com, or Instagram is great. Send me a message, and that's Embody with Noelle as well. And you can contact me via the website or on Instagram, whatever you prefer.
Okay. Very good. And we'll make sure we have those on the graphics for y'all. You can see it on the screens here to share that, so you know exactly what Noelle looks like, as you can see here on the video today. And I'm sure you'll find some other images of her on social media as you seek her out. Noelle, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart today for being here on the Everything Matters podcast to talk about your story, to share your world with us, and give us a glimpse of the difference that you're out to make. And I'm so inspired by what you're doing to support and to be a stand for women of all ages, all colors, all sizes, who want to really go out there and make something great of themselves. So thank you for being who you are.
Thank you so much, Bradford. I was really, really happy to be here. It was an honor to be one of your first guests on the podcast.
Outstanding. And we'll have you back sometime. Keep up the good work, okay?
Great. I'll try.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. This is Doris Brown's baby boy. We out.